Okay, here we are again uh, in Comics Cafe TV with another Bible reading. This is today's Bible reading. Earlier I did yesterday's because I missed yesterday's. Things were really busy. But now I'm doing today's Bible reading. We're in the New Testament right now um, in our chronological Bible. This is the NIV translation. And the October 26th reading has us looking at Jesus comforts Mary and Martha, John chapter 11, verses 17 through 57. Jesus predicts his death again in Mark chapter 10, verses 32 through 45. We see another account of that in Matthew chapter 20, verses 17 through 28. And Luke chapter 18, verses 31 through 34 are one more account of that. Now, following that, we have blind Bartimaeus receiving his sight in Mark chapter 10, verses 46 through 52, Matthew 20, verses 29 and 34, and Luke 18, verses 35 through 43. So, let's look at today's Bible reading, October 26th Bible reading. Jesus comforts Mary and Martha, John chapter 11, verses 17 through 57. You can go get your own Bible, or you can read along on a Bible reference from BibleGateway.com. So let's begin. On his arrival, Jesus found that Lazarus had already been in the tomb for 4 days. Bethany was less than 2 miles from Jerusalem, and many Jews had come to Martha and Mary for comfort to comfort them in their loss, in the loss of their brother. When Martha heard that Jesus was coming, she went out to meet him, but Mary stayed at home. "Lord," Martha said to Jesus, "if you had been here, my brother would not have died. But I know that even now God will give you whatever you ask." Jesus said to her, "Your brother will rise again." Martha answered, "I know he will rise again in the resurrection at the last day." Jesus said to her, "I am the resurrection and the life. He who believes in me will live, even when he dies. Whoever lives and believes in me will never die. Do you believe this?" Oh, we have one follower. Hello. Verse 27. "Yes, Lord," she told him, "I believe that you are the Christ, the Son of God, who was to come into the world." And after she said this, she went back and called her sister Mary aside. "The teacher is here," she said, "and is asking for you." When Mary heard this, she got up quickly and went to him. Now Jesus had not yet entered the village, but was still at the place where Martha had met him. When the Jews who had been with Mary in the house, comforting her, noticed how quickly she got up and went out, they followed her, supposing she was going to the tomb to mourn there. When Mary reached the place where Jesus was and saw him, she fell at his feet and said, "Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died." When Jesus saw her weeping, and the Jews who had come along with her also weeping, he was deeply moved in spirit and troubled. "Where have you laid him?" he asked. "Come and see, Lord," they replied. Jesus wept. Then the Jews said, "See how he loved him?" But some of them said, "Could not he who opened the eyes of the blind man have kept this man from dying?" Jesus, once more, deeply moved, came to the tomb. It was a cave with stone laid across the entrance. "Take away the stone," he said. "But, Lord," said Martha, the sister of the dead man, "by this time there is a bad odor, for he has been there for 4 days." Jesus said, "Did I not tell you that if you believe, you would see the glory of God?" So they took away the stone. Then Jesus looked up and said, "Father, I thank you that you have heard me. I knew that you always hear me, but I said this for the benefit of the people standing here, that they may believe that you sent me." When he said this, Jesus called out in a loud voice, "Lazarus, come out!" The dead man came out, his hands and feet wrapped with strips of linen and a cloth around his face. Jesus said to them, "Take off the grave clothes and let him go." Therefore, many of the Jews who had come to visit Mary and had seen what Jesus did put their faith in him. But some of them went to the Pharisees and told them what Jesus had done. Then Jesus' priests and the Pharisees called a meeting of the Sanhedrin. "What are we accomplishing?" they asked. "Here is this man performing many miracles and signs. If we let him go on like this, everyone will believe in him. And then the Romans will come and take away both our place and our nation." Then one of them, named Caiaphas, who was a high priest that year, spoke up. "Do you know nothing at all? Do you not realize it is better for you that one man die for the people than the whole nation perish?" He did not say this on his own, but as high priest that year, he prophesied that Jesus would die for the Jewish nation, and not only for that nation, but for the scattered children of God, to bring them together and make them one. So from that day on, they plotted to take his life. Therefore Jesus no longer moved about publicly among the Jews. Instead, he withdrew to a region near the desert, to a village called Ephraim, where he stayed with his disciples. When it was almost time for the Jewish Passover, they went up from the country to Jerusalem for their ceremonial cleansing before the Passover. They kept looking for Jesus, and as they stood in the temple area, they asked to one another, "What do you think? Isn't he coming to feast at all?" But the chief priest of the Pharisees had given orders that if anyone found out where Jesus was, he should report it so that they might arrest him. Moving on, Jesus predicts his death. Mark chapter 10, verses 32 through 45. After spending some time in the desert village of Ephraim, Jesus and his disciples made their way to Jerusalem. Their visit would culminate in Christ's crucifixion. They were on their way to Jerusalem with Jesus leading the way. And the disciples were astonished, while those who followed were afraid. Again, he took the 12 aside and told them what was going to happen to him. "When are we going to Jerusalem?" he said. "And the Son of Man will be betrayed." "Oh, we are going to Jerusalem," he said, "and the Son of Man will be betrayed to the chief priests and teachers of the law. They will condemn him to death, and they will hand him over to the Gentiles, who will mock him and spit on him, flog him and kill him. 3 days later he will rise." Then James and John, sons of Zebedee, came to him. "Teacher," they said, "we want to do for us whatever we ask. We want you to do for us whatever we ask." "What do you want for me to do?" he asked. They replied, "Let one of us sit at your right hand and the other at your left in glory." "You don't know what you're asking," Jesus said. "You can drink the cup. Can you drink the cup that I drink, or baptize with the baptism I am baptized with?" "We can," they answered. Jesus said to them, You will drink the cup I drink, and be baptized with the baptism I baptize with. But to sit at my right or left is not for me to grant. These places belong to those for whom they have been prepared." When the 10 heard about this, they became indignant with James and John. Jesus called them together and said, "You know that those who are regarded as rulers of the Gentiles lord it over them, and their high officials exercise authority over them. Not so with you. Instead, whoever wants to become great among you must be your servant. And whoever wants to be first must be slave of all. For even the Son of Man did not come to be served, but to serve, and to give his life as a ransom to many." Now as Jesus was going up to Jerusalem, he took the 12 disciples aside and said to them, "We are going up to Jerusalem, and the Son of Man will be betrayed to the chief priests and the teachers of the law. They will condemn him to death, and will turn him over to the Gentiles to be mocked and flogged and crucified. On the 3rd day he will be raised to life." The mother of Zebedee's sons came to Jesus. The mother of Zebedee's sons came to Jesus with her sons. Kneeling down, asked him a favor. "What is it you want?" he asked. She said, "Grant one of these 2 sons of mine Grant that one of these 2 sons of mine may sit at your right and the other at your left in your kingdom." "You do not know what you're asking," Jesus said to them. "Can you drink the cup that I'm going to drink?" "We can," they answered. Jesus said to them, "You will indeed drink from my cup, but to sit at my right and left is not for me to grant. These places belong to those whom they have been prepared by my Father." When the 10 heard about this, they were indignant to the 2 brothers. Jesus called them together. "You know that the rulers of the Gentiles lord it over them, and their high officials exercise authority over them. Not so with you. Instead, whoever wants to be great among you must be your servant. Whoever wants to be first among you must be your slave. Just as the Son of Man did not come to be served, but to serve, and give his life as a ransom to many." Luke 18, verse 31 through 34. Jesus took the 12 aside and told them, "We are going to Jerusalem, and everything that is written by the prophets about the Son of Man must be fulfilled. He will be handed over to the Gentiles, and they will mock him and insult him. They will spit on him, flog him, and kill him. On the third day, he will rise again." The disciples did not understand this. Its meaning was hidden from them, and that day, and they did not know what he was talking about. A blind man received sight. Mark 10, verse 46 through 52. They came to Jericho. Jesus and his disciples, together with a large crowd, were leaving the city. A blind man, Bartimaeus, that is the son of Timaeus, was sitting by the roadside, begging. When he heard that it was Jesus of Nazareth, he began to shout, "Jesus, Son of David, have mercy on me." Many rebuked him and told him to be quiet, and he shouted all the more, "Son of David, have mercy on me." Jesus stopped and said, "Call him." So they called to the blind man, "Cheer up, on your feet. He's calling you." Throwing back his cloak, he jumped up to his feet and called to Jesus. "What do you want for me to do?" "What do you want me to do for you?" Jesus asked him. The blind man said, "Rabbi, I want to see." "Go," said Jesus. "Your faith has healed you." Immediately he received his sight and followed Jesus along the road. Matthew 20, verses 29 through 34. As Jesus and his disciples were leaving Jericho, a large crowd followed him. 2 blind men were sitting on the roadside. They heard that Jesus was going by. They shouted, "Lord, Son of David, have mercy on us." The crowd rebuked them and told them to be quiet. But they shouted all the louder, "Lord, Son of David, have mercy on us." Jesus stopped and called them. "What do you want me to do for you?" he asked. "Lord," they answered, "we want our sight." Jesus had compassion on them and touched their eyes. Immediately they received sight and followed him. Luke 18, verses 35 and 43. Jesus approached Jericho. A blind man was sitting at the roadside, begging. When he heard the crowd going by, he asked what was happening. They told him Jesus of Nazareth was passing by. He called out, "Jesus, Son of David, have mercy on me." Those who led the way rebuked him and told him to be quiet, but he shouted all the more, "Son of David, have mercy on me." Jesus stopped and ordered the man to be brought to him. When he came near, Jesus asked him, "What do you want me to do for you?" Lord, I want to see," he replied. Jesus said to him, "Receive your sight. Your faith has healed you." Immediately he received his sight and followed Jesus, praising God. When all people saw it, they also praised God. And let's think about all the things that we have to praise God for. There's many blessings that he gives us every day, and many things we have to be thankful for. And if there are troubles, we can still go to him, because God's a really good listener to her. He's a good listener, and he hears our prayers. Well, that is another Bible reading. Thank you for joining me. There's 2 in the room. Hello, both of you. I'll be posting this recording later, and I hope that God blesses you for the rest of the day. Take care. Papa. Arrivedere.